My name is Luna Carter, and on the day I was supposed to marry the love of my life, I discovered the ugliest truth imaginable. The church smelled of lilies and perfume, laughter echoing through the hall, but behind one half-closed door I heard everything. "I'm not in love with her," my groom whispered. "I just need her money. Once it's done, we split it 50-50. He wasn't talking to a stranger. He was talking to my sister. For 3 seconds, I couldn't breathe. The world tilted, the music faded, and the diamond on my finger suddenly felt like a chain. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, walked away, and made one phone call. So when the pastor asked, "Does anyone object?" Minutes later, I stood up. And that's when the wedding turned into a crime scene. Everyone said the morning of your wedding is supposed to feel magical. For me, it felt choreographed, every smile rehearsed, every detail polished to perfection. The makeup artist hummed love songs, the bridesmaids fluttered around me like butterflies, and my mother kept dabbing her eyes, whispering, "Your father would be so proud, Luna." I smiled, pretending to believe her. Evan Moore, my groom, had always been the kind of man who made others believe in him. Charming, well-dressed, with that easy confidence that filled a room. We'd met at a charity event last summer. He laughed at my dry jokes, remembered my favorite wine, and even volunteered at my father's foundation. Within months, he had won everyone over, even my skeptical older brother Noah. Still, there was always something about him I couldn't name, something too perfect. When I mentioned that once, my sister Harper had laughed. "You overthink everything," she said, zipping up my wedding dress that morning. "He adores you. Can't you just be happy for once?" I nodded, though something inside me twisted. Harper looked radiant that morning, too soft pink dress, her hair pinned with delicate pearls. She leaned in and adjusted my veil, her fingers trembling just a little. "You deserve this day," she whispered. "You really do." Funny how betrayal always comes dressed as love. As the morning passed, everyone floated in and out of my dressing room. Photographers, bridesmaids, caterers with champagne flutes. The air buzzed with excitement. But I couldn't shake the weight pressing behind my ribs. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was instinct. Evan stopped by briefly before the ceremony, breaking tradition. "I couldn't wait," he said with that practiced grin. He kissed my forehead, his cologne sharp and sweet. "In a few minutes, you'll be Mrs. Moore." Mrs. Moore. The name sounded hollow even then. When he left, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the satin gown, the pearls, the flowers, and felt like I was watching someone else's movie. A perfect scene, built on cracks no one could see. Then Harper came in again, pretending to check on me, but she seemed distracted, glancing toward the door, biting her lip. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just making sure the guests are seated." Her tone was light, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. She left too fast. That's when I heard it, faint voices echoing down the marble hallway. Evan's low, confident tone. Harper's soft, anxious whisper. At first, I smiled, thinking they were joking or rehearsing a speech. But then his next words drifted through the air like a blade. "Relax, Harper. She'll never find out. By tomorrow, her money's ours." And just like that, the perfect day ended before it ever began. My hands went cold. The bouquet slipped from my fingers, because in that single moment I knew my wedding wasn't about love. It was a setup, and I was the target. I froze outside that hallway, hidden just beyond the half-closed door. My veil brushed against the wall as I leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. My heart was pounding so loud I was terrified they'd hear it. Evan's voice was calm, silky, the kind of tone he used when convincing donors to sign checks. "It's all under control," he murmured. "After the ceremony, the transfer goes through. Then we disappear for a while. Simple." Harper's voice trembled. "You make it sound easy, but she's my sister, Evan. She trusts me." He laughed low, dismissive. "That's what makes it easy. She's emotional, naive. She won't see it coming." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. My knees threatened to give way, but I stayed still, listening. Every sentence was a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. Harper whispered again, desperate. "What if she suspects something?" "She won't," he said sharply. "I've handled women like her before." Women like her. That was how he saw me, not a person, not a bride, just another opportunity. My fingers shook so hard that the engagement ring glittered like it was mocking me. For the first time, I realized how cold the diamond felt against my skin. Inside the room, Harper's voice cracked. I can't go through with this, Evan. Maybe we should tell her. Tell her? He laughed again, colder this time. And lose everything? You're already in too deep, Harper. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. I imagined them standing close, maybe his hand on her arm, the same way he used to hold mine. My stomach turned. In that moment, something inside me split the part that wanted to collapse and the part that wanted justice. I took one quiet step back, then another, the sound of my heels echoing like a metronome of betrayal. My vision blurred, but my mind sharpened with one clear thought. I won't let them win. I ducked into an empty room, pressed my hand against my chest and forced myself to breathe. Then I pulled out my phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through contacts until I found her name, Detective Maria Hayes. She had investigated Evan's company months ago for financial fraud before he somehow walked free. I hesitated for one heartbeat, then pressed call. Maria, it's Luna, I said, my voice breaking but steady enough to be understood. Luna, you okay? No, but I will be. I just found out my fiancé and my sister are planning something. Something criminal. No. Her tone changed instantly. Don't confront them. Keep calm. I'll be there before the vows. As I hung up, I stared at my reflection in a framed mirror. My mascara hadn't smudged. My lipstick was still perfect. On the outside, I looked like a bride, but inside, I had already turned into something else entirely. A woman ready for war. When I walked back into the bridal suite, everyone saw a glowing bride. No one noticed my hands trembling inside the bouquet. My mother fussed over my dress. The planner adjusted the train, and Harper's sweet, guilty Harper returned with red eyes and a forced smile. Everything's ready, she said softly. Good, I replied, forcing my lips to curve. Everything has to be perfect. And it would be, just not in the way she imagined. I checked the clock. 30 minutes until the ceremony. My pulse thudded in rhythm with the ticking second hand. Every sound was magnified laughter. Footsteps, the organ rehearsing faintly from the chapel. Somewhere outside, Evan was greeting guests, pretending to be the perfect gentleman. I caught sight of him through the window, his arm around my aunt, his charming grin fooling everyone. The same grin he'd used to steal my sister's trust, and almost my future. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Detective Maria Hayes. In position. Do not act until I give you a signal. We'll move the moment he makes contact with the transfer. I exhaled slowly. The trap was set. For a second, I almost felt pity. Not for Evan, he'd built his cage, but for Harper. My sister, who'd once shared secrets under our blanket fort, who'd cried when Dad died, who'd said she'd always protect me. Now she stood behind me, adjusting my veil again, hands shaking so violently I could feel it through the fabric. Harper, I said quietly, meeting her reflection in the mirror. Are you okay? Of course, she whispered too fast. Why wouldn't I be? Our eyes locked in the mirror, hers full of panic, mine full of something she couldn't name yet. Then I smiled, calm, distant. You're right, nothing's wrong. She flinched. When the coordinator knocked on the door, announcing it was time, my heartbeat steadied. The weight of the gown didn't bother me anymore. It felt like armor. Harper took her place behind me, clutching the bouquet she'd hold during the ceremony. My mother kissed my cheek. You look breathtaking, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom, I murmured. I just hope this day ends, exactly as it should. The double doors of the chapel stood ahead, glowing under stained glass. I could hear the murmur of guests, the rustle of dresses, the shuffle of polished shoes. As I took my father's old wedding handkerchief from my purse, I whispered under my breath, For you, Dad. Watch what happens next. When the doors opened, the sunlight spilled across the aisle like a spotlight. The music swelled. And as I stepped forward, each step measured, each breath deliberate, I wasn't walking toward love anymore. I was walking toward justice. The moment the church doors opened, a wave of applause rolled through the air. My mother sniffled, my friends gasped, cameras flashed like fireflies. To everyone watching, I was the picture of joy. To me, it felt like walking into a storm I had built myself. Evan stood at the altar, looking devastatingly handsome, confident, controlled, composed. His smile was that same flawless smile that once made me fall in love. Now I saw it for what it was, a mask. As I reached him, he took my hands, squeezing gently. "You look perfect," he whispered. I met his gaze, my own voice calm. "So do you. Almost too perfect." I was not stranger. He laughed softly, misreading my tone. He thought I was nervous. Good. Harper stood to my left, her face pale, her bouquet trembling slightly. She avoided my eyes, focusing instead on her shoes. Every few seconds, I caught her glancing toward Evan, guilt flickering like lightning behind her lashes. The pastor cleared his throat and began. "We gather here today to celebrate the union of Luna Carter and Evan Moore." His words washed over me, distant and hollow. Union. Forever. Love. They sounded like lies now, rehearsed lines in a play that had already been rewritten. I scanned the pews, my eyes catching on Detective Hayes, sitting quietly near the back, disguised as a guest. Her gaze met mine for a fraction of a second, calm, steady, reassuring. She gave the faintest nod. I turned back to Evan. He looked so sure of himself, so proud, completely unaware that the walls were closing in. When it was time for vows, he went first. His voice was smooth as silk. "Luna, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one. You brought light into my life. I promised to cherish and protect you, to stand by you through every storm." I almost laughed. "Protect me? From what himself?" The audience sighed, touched. My mother wiped her tears. The irony burned in my throat. Then it was my turn. I took a slow breath, feeling the diamond ring on my finger cold, heavy, symbolic of every lie he'd told. I smiled sweetly. "Evan," I said softly, "I once believed love was about trust, about looking into someone's eyes and knowing they'd never lie to you. But I've learned, even the most beautiful eyes can hide the darkest secrets." And see, in can reserved for the speeding. A murmur rippled through the church. Evan's smile faltered for half a second. Harper's hands gripped her bouquet tighter. I continued, calm and measured. "And so today, I make my own promise. To always protect myself even from those who say, 'I love you.'" The pastor blinked, confused. My mother frowned. Evan chuckled awkwardly, trying to turn it into a joke. "She's got a sense of humor, doesn't she?" he said to the crowd. I smiled back. "You have no idea." Because in exactly 3 minutes, he was going to wish he'd never said "I do." The pastor smiled warmly, oblivious to the tension brewing under the vaulted ceiling. The air felt heavy, too still, too charged. I could hear the faint hum of the microphone, the soft rustle of silk, the heartbeat in my throat. "If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony," the pastor said, his voice echoing through the church, "speak now or forever hold your peace." It was meant to be a formality, but to me it was the signal. I released Evan's hand. "Actually," I said clearly, my voice slicing through the silence, "I do." The room froze. My mother's gasp echoed across the pews. Harper's face drained of color. Evan blinked, his charming smile faltering into confusion. "Luna," he said, half laughing, "is this some kind of joke?" I tilted my head. "You could say that, but I'm not the one laughing." Every pair of eyes turned toward me. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. It was like something inside me had snapped into focus. I reached into my bouquet and pulled out my phone. The screen glowed as I tapped play. And then his voice filled the church. "I'm not in love with her. I just need her money. Once it's done, we split it 50-50. Gasps erupted through the crowd like a chain reaction. Guests whispered, heads turned, jaws dropped. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Evan's face went white. "What the hell is that?" he barked, his composure cracking. "It's you," I said evenly. "The real you." He lunged toward me, but I stepped back. "Sit down, Evan. This is taken out of context," he shouted, his voice rising. "You don't know what you're doing." From behind me, Harper whispered, trembling. "Oh my God. Luna, I can explain." I spun around, my veil whipping in the air. "Explain how you were planning to rob me? Or how you were sleeping with my fiancé behind my back?" The audience collectively inhaled. Harper broke down, clutching her bouquet like a shield. "He said he loved me. He said he'd leave you after the wedding." The crowd erupted in murmurs. My mother covered her mouth. The pastor tried to intervene, stammering, "Maybe we should take a moment." "No," I said firmly. "The show's not over." Right on cue, the heavy wooden doors creaked open. Two uniformed officers stepped in, followed by Detective Maria Hayes, calm and unflinching. Her badge glinted under the stained glass light. "Evan Moore," she announced, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "You are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted identity theft." Evan turned, his jaw tightening. "You set me up." I met his glare head-on. "You set yourself up. I just pressed play." As the officers approached, he tried to back away, but they grabbed his wrists, twisting his arms behind him. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed like a gunshot through the sacred hall. "You can't do this here," he yelled, his voice breaking. "I can," I said softly. "And I just did." Harper sank to her knees, sobbing. "Evan, please say something." He sneered at her, venom dripping from every word. "You think I ever loved you? You were just leverage." The look on her face, pure devastation, wasn't satisfying. It was tragic, but necessary. Detective Hayes gave me a nod, then turned to lead him away. As Evan passed me, he leaned in close, his voice low and hateful. "You'll regret this, Luna." I smiled faintly. "No. You will." The doors slammed behind him. For a moment, the world was silent again, except for the ringing in my ears and the pounding of my heart. The pastor stood frozen, the congregation speechless. Then someone began clapping. Slowly, awkwardly. Another joined. Within seconds, the church was filled with applause, not of joy, but of disbelief, admiration, shock. I didn't move. I just stood there, the veil falling from my hair, pooling at my feet. My bouquet slipped from my hands. My mother rushed forward, her arms wrapping around me. "Oh, my baby," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered back. "Because I had to see it through." Behind her, Harper was escorted out by an officer for questioning. She looked at me one last time, eyes swollen, her face pale. "I'm sorry, Luna. I never meant." "You did," I interrupted quietly. "You just didn't think I'd find out." As the doors closed again, I stood in the empty silence of the altar, surrounded by flowers, music, and broken vows. The pastor cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, would you like to continue?" I almost laughed. "No, Pastor. I think the wedding's officially over." Then I turned, walked down the aisle alone, my heels striking against the marble like thunder. Outside, the sky had turned gray. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant sirens. I looked up, letting the first drop of rain hit my cheek. And for the first time that day, I smiled not because I was happy, but because justice had finally arrived dressed in white. The rain started as a drizzle when I stepped outside the church. The crowd had spilled into the courtyard, murmuring like bees after someone kicked their hive. My white dress clung to my legs, heavy and cold, but I didn't care. I felt weightless, like someone had just lifted a secret off my chest that had been crushing me for months. Behind me, the church doors opened again. Harper stumbled out, escorted by one of the officers. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her pearl hairpin missing. She looked at me the way a drowning person looks at the shore, desperate, hopeless, reaching. "Luna, please, just listen," she sobbed. "To what?" I said quietly. "To another lie?" She shook her head, her shoulders trembling. "He said he loved me. He said you didn't care about him, that you were marrying him for status, not love." I laughed softly, bitterly. "So, you betrayed me because a man told you a story that made you feel special?" Harper collapsed to her knees on the wet stone steps. "I didn't know, Luna. I didn't know he'd go that far." I stared at her, my sister, my blood, and felt an ache deeper than anger. "You knew enough," I said finally. "You just didn't stop." The officer cleared his throat gently, asking if I wanted to press charges against her as an accomplice. I hesitated, the rain dripping from my veil onto my hands. Harper looked up, terrified. "Please," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My heart screamed, "Yes, make her pay." But then I remembered my father's words. "Revenge doesn't heal. It just trades your peace for theirs." I turned to the officer. "No charges," I said softly. She'll punish herself enough. He nodded and guided Harper to her feet. She broke into tears again, but I couldn't comfort her. I had no comfort left to give. Inside, guests were leaving in awkward silence. The string quartet had stopped playing hours ago, yet the echoes of the aborted wedding still hung in the air. My mother sat near the front pew, her hands shaking as she clutched her rosary. When she saw me, she rose and walked slowly down the aisle. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with pride and sorrow. "You did the right thing," she whispered, wrapping her arms around me. "Then why does it feel so wrong?" I murmured against her shoulder. She pulled back, brushing a strand of wet hair from my face. "Because doing the right thing always hurts first." I nodded, unable to hold back tears anymore. They mixed with the rain, streaking down my cheeks as guests slipped past us, whispering words like brave, heartbreaking, unbelievable. By the time the last person left, only the echo of my footsteps remained. I stood before the altar again, the place where I was supposed to start my forever. The flowers were drooping, the candles still burning low. The empty aisles stretched before me like a road I'd have to walk alone. I took off my engagement ring and placed it on the altar. "Here lies what was never real," I said under my breath. Then I turned and walked out, barefoot, my gown dragging through puddles, the church bells tolling behind me not for a wedding, but for a burial. Outside, Detective Hayes was waiting by her car. She handed me her card. "If he tries to contact you again, call me." "He won't," I said. "He already lost everything." She nodded, studying my face. "You're stronger than you think, Luna." As she drove away, I looked up at the gray sky. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was louder than thunder. 6 months had passed since that day, yet sometimes I still heard the echo of those church bells in my dreams. They didn't sound like celebration anymore, they sounded like warning. Life in Charleston had quieted down. The newspapers had moved on from runaway groom arrested at the altar, and gossip finally died out. People stopped whispering when I walked into cafes. My name was no longer a headline, just a story people half remembered when they talked about that wedding scandal. I had sold the dress, donated the flowers, returned the rings, but the memories, those took longer to let go. Evan Moore was now inmate #41792 at the state correctional facility. The trial had been public, humiliating, exhaustive. Turns out he'd conned 3 other women before me, all left bankrupt and ashamed. Harper had testified against him, her voice shaking as she read text messages that proved his manipulation. I hadn't gone to the sentencing. I didn't need to watch him lose his freedom. I'd already taken mine back. One morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. The return address made my stomach tighten. South Carolina State Penitentiary. For a long time, I just stared at it, debating whether to tear it apart. But curiosity or closure won. The letter was short, written in neat, measured handwriting. "Luna, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I grew up never knowing what love was. By the time I met you, I only knew how to use people before they used me. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. You were the first person who ever scared me. Not because you caught me, but because you saw through me. I don't hate you for what happened. I envy you. You knew how to walk away. Evan." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer beside my father's old watch. Not to keep him close, but to remind myself how far I'd come. Later that evening, Harper showed up at my doorstep. She looked different, thinner, older, her once confident posture now fragile. She'd been through therapy and was trying to rebuild her life. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry again, and that I miss you." For a moment, the air between us felt like glass, fragile, ready to shatter. I wanted to slam the door, but instead, I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. "It's cold out." We sat in silence for a long while. No apologies, no tears, just quiet, the kind that comes after 2 people finally run out of anger. Before she left, Harper turned to me, her voice trembling. "How do you do it, Luna? How do you keep going after everything?" I looked out the window, where the evening sun was setting over the harbor. "You rebuild," I said, "piece by piece, even when the cracks still show." That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of that church, because I'd finally stopped reliving the day I was betrayed, and started living the life I chose after. Spring returned to Charleston with the scent of magnolia in the air, soft, forgiving and new. The world had color again, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't flinch when someone mentioned the word wedding. I moved back into my father's old coastal house, the one Evan once pretended to admire for its sentimental charm. I spent months restoring it, repainting the porch, repairing old shutters, planting lavender by the front steps. The rhythm of rebuilding became therapy. Sandpaper and sunlight, wood polish and music. One morning, as I hammered the final nail into a porch rail, my mother stopped by with coffee. She watched me work in silence before saying, "You remind me of your father when he rebuilt this place after the hurricane." I smiled faintly. He always said a foundation's strength isn't proven by what it can hold, but by what it can survive. She nodded. "You've survived plenty, sweetheart." After she left, I sat on the steps, looking out at the waves. A warm breeze lifted my hair, and for the first time, the ocean didn't feel like a mirror of loss, it felt like freedom. I opened my journal, the one I'd started after therapy, and wrote 3 words at the top of the page. What comes next? Ix. I wrote about learning to trust again. Not in people, but in timing. About realizing love isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's the quiet act of saving yourself. The afternoon light shifted as I read over old entries, tracing the girl I used to be, the hopeful bride, the broken woman, the survivor. I didn't erase her. I honored her. She was the proof I could fall apart and still build something stronger from the wreckage. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. It was Detective Maria Hayes, holding a brown envelope. "The case is officially closed," she said. "He took the plea deal. No chance of appeal." I nodded. "Thank you for everything." Maria smiled faintly. "You know, when I met you that day, I thought you'd break." "I did," I said. "Just not the way he wanted." She chuckled and handed me her card. "If you ever need a favor, though, honestly, I think you're doing just fine." When she left, I sat on the porch again, watching the sky blush into gold. The sea breeze carried the faint echo of laughter from a nearby wedding on the beach. Instead of pain, I felt something different, peace. I whispered to myself, "Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me." Then I closed my eyes and imagined the sound of church bells not as warning this time, but as a promise. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of my second beginning, the kind built on strength, truth, and a foundation that could finally, truly, hold.